They say a broken heart is just a metaphor. They're lying. When you truly get betrayed by the person you anchored your entire life to, you feel it in your bones. It's a physical, suffocating pressure in the center of your chest. But the worst part isn't the cheating itself. It's the absolute destruction of your reality. You realize that the woman you kissed good morning, the one who planned grocery lists with you and slept on your chest, was actually a ghost. And while you were busy loving her, she was looking at you with utter contempt, annoyed that she even had to pretend. My name is Jake, and for 4 years, I thought I was in a happy, normal marriage. We weren't rich, we didn't live in a mansion, and we both worked 40 hours a week just to keep our comfortable 2-bedroom apartment. I thought we were a team, but looking back, I was just a placeholder until she got bored. Her name was Elena, and the shift in her wasn't subtle. It was violent, sudden, and incredibly cruel. It started about 6 months ago. Elena stopped greeting me when I came home. I would walk through the door, exhausted from the warehouse, and she wouldn't even look up from her phone. If I asked her how her day was, she'd sigh. This loud, exasperated sigh, like my voice was physically grating on her nerves. "I'm tired, Jake. Can you just not suffocate me the second you walk in?" she snapped one Tuesday. I swallowed the knot in my throat, assuming she was just stressed with her new job at a logistics firm. I started doing all the cooking. I did her laundry. I tried to make her life as frictionless as possible. My reward? Absolute disdain. Then she introduced me to Marcus. Marcus was a vendor she worked with. He didn't just cross boundaries, he bulldozed them, and Elena handed him the keys to the bulldozer. He was tall, loud, and carried this arrogant smirk that made my blood boil the second I met him. Elena invited him to our apartment for some drinks with a few of her coworkers on a Friday night. I was trying to be the good host, handing out beers, when I walked into the kitchen. Marcus was leaning against our counter, cornering Elena. He wasn't respecting her personal space. His hand was resting low on her waist and she was giggling. Not a polite, awkward laugh, a deep, flushed, flirtatious giggle. I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice tight. "Can I get by?" Marcus turned his head slowly, not removing his hand from my wife's waist for an agonizing 3 seconds. He looked me up and down, taking in my faded t-shirt and jeans, and smirked. "Sure thing, buddy," Marcus said, his tone dripping with condescension. He patted the counter. "Nice place you guys got here. A bit cramped, but cozy." Elena didn't defend our home. She didn't step away from him. She actually rolled her eyes at me. "Jake, don't just stand there staring. Grab the chips, people are waiting." I waited until the guests left at 1 a.m. The apartment was quiet. Elena was lazily wiping down the kitchen counter, humming to herself. She looked happier than she had in months. "What the hell was that tonight?" I asked, keeping my voice low but shaking with adrenaline. She paused, sponge in hand, and looked at me like I was a piece of trash she'd scraped off her shoe. "What are you whining about now?" "Marcus," I said, stepping closer. "His hand was on your waist, Elena, in our kitchen, and you were eating it up. Who does he think he is?" Elena dropped the sponge into the sink with a wet slap. She crossed her arms and let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Are you serious right now? Are you actually doing this?" She stepped right up to me, her eyes completely devoid of the love I thought we shared. "He's a confident guy, Jake. He's friendly. Not everyone is as insecure and aggressively pathetic as you are." "Insecure?" I snapped. "He was all over you." "He touched my waist!" she yelled back, completely unbothered, totally unapologetic. "God, you are so deeply embarrassing. This right here, this needy, paranoid jealousy, it's exactly why I can't stand being around you lately. You're suffocating me with your weakness." I stood there, paralyzed. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She weaponized my very valid anger and turned it into a flaw in my character. "I'm going to bed," she sneered, turning on her heel. "Sleep on the couch. I don't want to look at you right now." I sat in the dark living room, my heart pounding in my ears. I knew right then that she was cheating. You don't fiercely defend another man's right to touch you unless you've already given him permission to do a lot more. But I had no proof, no texts, no photos, just the agonizing reality that my wife was slipping away and she was enjoying torturing me in the process. The next morning, I woke up with a stiff neck on the couch. I heard the shower running. I walked into the bedroom and Elena's phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up. She hadn't even bothered to put a passcode on it. She was that arrogant. She thought I was too much of a coward to check. I picked it up, a text from Marcus. "Still thinking about the bathroom at the restaurant yesterday. You're crazy, E. See you at 2. My lungs seized. Yesterday. They were together yesterday on her lunch break. The bathroom door clicked open and steam billowed out. Elena stepped into the bedroom, wrapped in a towel. She saw me holding her phone. Most women would panic. Most women would drop the act, cry, or beg. Not Elena. She walked right up to me, snatched the phone out of my shaking hand, looked at the screen and then looked me dead in the eyes. "Read something you didn't like?" she asked, a cruel smile playing on her lips. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. She didn't stutter. She didn't try to snatch the phone back in a panic. She just stood there, dripping wet in her towel, looking at me like an annoying child who had just interrupted her favorite TV show. "Are you sleeping with him?" My voice cracked. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't help it. My whole body was trembling. Elena rolled her eyes so hard I thought they would get stuck in her head. She walked over to the vanity, picked up her hairbrush, and started casually brushing her wet hair. "Oh my God, Jake, you are literally psychotic," she said, her tone dripping with boredom. "We had a client lunch yesterday. I spilled vinaigrette on my silk blouse. Marcus helped me get it out in the family restroom with some soda water so the stain wouldn't set. That's what he meant by crazy, because we were laughing about the mess. But of course your pathetic, paranoid brain goes straight to the gutter." I stared at her. It was such a bold, ridiculous lie. You don't text someone still thinking about the bathroom. If you were just scrubbing a salad stain. "He said, 'See you at 2. I pushed back, stepping closer. "See you at 2 for what, Elena?" She slammed the hairbrush down on the vanity. The sharp crack echoed in the small bedroom. "For a project review," she screamed, her face finally contorting into anger. But it wasn't the guilt-ridden anger of a cheater caught in the act. It was the fury of an abuser being questioned. "I am so sick of this, Jake. I bust my ass at a new job, trying to network, trying to move up, and I have to come home to a jealous, toxic loser who snoops through my phone. If you ever touch my property again, we are done. Do you understand me? I will pack my bags and leave." She was threatening me. She was the one who was cheating, but she had twisted the knife so perfectly that for a split second, my gaslit brain actually wondered if I was ruining my own marriage. I didn't say another word. I just turned around, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. I went to work at the warehouse, but I was a ghost. I loaded pallets on autopilot, my mind screaming. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. All I could think about was the smirk on Marcus's face from the party and the cold, dead look in Elena's eyes that morning. By 1:30 p.m., I realized I couldn't just sit there. I needed to know. No private investigators, no hidden cameras. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. I told my supervisor I felt sick and clocked out. I drove straight to the industrial park where Elena's logistics firm was located. I parked 2 blocks away in the lot of a fast food joint, giving me a clear view of her office building's front entrance. I sat in my hot car, sweating, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. At exactly 1:55 p.m., a massive, lifted black truck pulled into the parking lot of her building. Marcus. 5 minutes later, the glass doors of the office opened. Elena walked out. My breath hitched. She wasn't wearing the conservative blazer and slacks she had put on that morning. She had taken the blazer off, unbuttoned her blouse lower than usual, and reapplied bright red lipstick. She practically skipped to the passenger side of the truck and climbed in. They didn't drive to a motel. They didn't go find some secluded alleyway. They just sat there, right in the front parking lot of her workplace. Through the windshield of his truck, in broad daylight, I watched my wife lean over the center console. I watched Marcus grab the back of her neck, pulling her in. They started kissing violently. It wasn't a quick peck. It was aggressive, hungry, and completely shameless. Something inside me snapped. The crushing sadness I had felt all morning completely evaporated, replaced by a pure, blinding rage. I didn't think. I just acted. I threw my car door open and marched across the street. I didn't care who saw me. I walked right up to the passenger side of the black truck. They were so distracted, they didn't even see me coming. I grabbed the door handle and yanked it open. Elena gasped and shoved Marcus away, wiping her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. For the first time, she actually looked caught. "Project review going well?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Elena scrambled back against the seat, her face flushed red. "Jake, what the hell are you doing here? Are you stalking me?" Even now, caught with another man's saliva on her lips, she tried to make me the villain. But it was Marcus's reaction that truly made my blood run cold. He didn't apologize. He didn't look ashamed. He just leaned back in the driver's seat, draped one arm casually over the steering wheel, and let out a loud, barking laugh. "Well, well, well," Marcus chuckled, looking me up and down. "Looks like the guard dog finally grew some teeth." "Shut your mouth," I snarled at him. "This is between me and my wife." "Wife?" Marcus smirked, wiping a smudge of Elena's red lipstick off his own chin with his thumb. "Buddy, she hasn't been your wife for months. You're just the guy who pays half her rent." I lunged forward, grabbing Marcus by the collar of his expensive polo shirt, pulling him halfway over the center console. I was ready to beat him until my hands bled. "Jake, stop it! Stop it right now!" Elena shrieked. She didn't grab my arm to stop me. She slapped me hard, right across the face. The sting of her hand on my cheek froze me in my tracks. I let go of Marcus and looked at her, my wife, the woman I had vowed to protect. "Get away from his truck," Elena hissed, her face twisted in absolute disgust. "You are making a scene. You are embarrassing me. Go home, Jake. Just go home." "Embarrassing you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You're a whore, Elena. You're making out with another man in a parking lot, and I'm embarrassing you?" "Yes," she screamed, "because you're pathetic. Look at you. You're a warehouse worker wearing cheap boots, throwing a temper tantrum because you can't satisfy a real woman. Marcus is twice the man you'll ever be. Now get the hell out of here before I call security." Marcus just sat there grinning, enjoying the show. "You heard the lady, pal. Shut the door. You're letting the AC out." I looked at her one last time. There was no soul left in her eyes, just venom. I slammed the truck door shut. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove away. She thought she had won. She thought I was going to go home, pack my bags, and crawl away like the pathetic loser she claimed I was. She thought she could just discard me like garbage and face zero consequences. But as I drove back to our apartment, a terrifyingly cold, calculated thought formed in my mind. I wasn't going to cry anymore, and I sure as hell wasn't leaving my apartment. I was going to destroy them. The drive home was a blur, but my mind was crystal clear. The panic and the heartbreak were gone, burned away by the sheer disrespect I had just witnessed. Elena didn't just cheat on me. She humiliated me. She paraded her betrayal in my face, slapped me, and demanded I apologize for bleeding on her shoes. I walked into our apartment, the quiet space that used to be my sanctuary, and went straight to the kitchen. I grabbed a box of heavy-duty black trash bags. I didn't throw things out the window. I didn't smash her makeup or cut up her dresses. That's what a desperate, out-of-control man does. I was entirely in control. I methodically moved through our bedroom, sweeping her designer clothes, her shoes, and her jewelry into the bags. I dragged them to the front door, lining them up like soldiers. 6 bags in total, 4 years of a marriage, reduced to a pile of plastic by the entryway. At 6:15 p.m., the lock clicked. The door pushed open, hitting the first trash bag with a dull thud. "What the hell is this?" Elena's voice rang out, sharp and irritated. I walked out of the kitchen, leaning against the hallway wall. She wasn't alone. Marcus was standing right behind her, his arms crossed, still wearing that infuriating, arrogant smirk. She had actually brought him back to my home. "It's your garbage," I said, my voice deadpan. "I figured I'd save you the trouble of packing. Grab your bags and get out." Elena let out a harsh, theatrical laugh. She pushed past the bags and stepped into the living room, completely ignoring my command. Marcus followed, wiping his boots on my rug like he owned the place. "You've got this entirely backwards, Jake," Elena sneered, crossing her arms. She looked around the apartment, assessing it. "I'm on this lease too, and considering you're the one throwing a violent, pathetic temper tantrum, you are the one leaving. I want you out by Friday. Marcus is going to move some of his things in here until we find a bigger place." The absolute audacity of it stole the breath from my lungs for a second. She wanted to kick me out of my own home so she could play house with her affair partner in the very bed I paid for. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, stepping forward. "My name is the primary on the lease. You pay 1/3 of the rent, Elena. I pay the rest. I pay the electric. I pay the internet. You are a guest who overstayed her welcome. Take your bags and leave." Marcus chuckled, stepping in front of Elena to puff his chest out. He towered over me, trying to use his size to intimidate me into submission. "Listen, champ," Marcus said, his voice low and threatening. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. He wants you out. So you're going to pack a bag, you're going to hand over the keys, and you're going to walk away like a good little boy. Otherwise, I might have to physically throw you out. He took a step closer, invading my space, waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. You lay a finger on me, Marcus, and we'll see how tough you are when you're spitting teeth onto my linoleum, I said, staring dead into his eyes. For a second, the smugness faltered. He wasn't expecting me to stand my ground. Bullies like Marcus only thrive when their victims cower. Elena rolled her eyes, stepping around Marcus to stand face to face with me. She was glowing with this toxic, unearned confidence. "Enough with the fake tough guy act, Jake. It's embarrassing," she said, her voice dripping with poison. "You're leaving, and you're not going to fight me on this, because if you do, I will make your life a living hell. You don't want to stress me out right now. I'm pregnant." The room went dead silent. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at her, searching her face for a lie, but she was smiling, a cold, victorious, sickening smile. "That's right," she continued, putting a hand on her flat stomach, her eyes locked on mine to savor my pain. "I'm carrying a real man's child. Marcus and I are starting a family, so you are going to pack your pathetic little life into a box and leave us alone." She expected me to break down. She expected me to fall to my knees in despair. But I didn't have to do anything, because the real plot twist wasn't her pregnancy. It was the reaction of the real man standing behind her. I looked over her shoulder at Marcus. All the blood had completely drained from his face. His smug smirk had vanished, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. "Wait. What?" Marcus stammered, stepping back toward the door. "Pregnant? What are you talking about?" Elena turned around, her victorious smile faltering just a fraction. "I took a test this morning, baby. I was going to tell you tonight. We're having a baby." No, Marcus said, shaking his head rapidly, his hands up defensively. "We talked about this. I told you I am not looking for a family. I have a life. I have plans. I thought you were on the pill." "I missed a few days. It's not a big deal," Elena said, her voice losing its venom and suddenly pitching into high, desperate panic. She reached for his arm. "Marcus, it's fine. We can afford it. We love each other." "Love each other?" Marcus laughed, but this time it wasn't a confident laugh. It was frantic and cruel. He pulled his arm away from her like she was diseased. "Are you insane? We've been hooking up for 3 months. I'm not marrying you, Elena, and I sure as hell am not playing daddy." I just stood there, watching the destruction of my wife's entire fantasy in real time. "Marcus, please, don't do this right now. Not in front of him," she begged, gesturing frantically toward me, completely abandoning her arrogant persona. "I'm out," Marcus said, turning toward the door. "I'm not doing this. Don't call me." He practically tripped over the garbage bags in his rush to escape. The front door slammed shut behind him, rattling the picture frames on the wall. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena stood frozen in the middle of the living room, staring at the closed door. Her safety net, her real man, the guy she had literally thrown her marriage away for, had just abandoned her at the mere mention of responsibility. I looked at the garbage bags, then I looked back at her. "Looks like your ride is gone," I said, my voice completely hollow. "I suggest you call an Uber." Elena slowly turned away from the door and looked at me. The venom, the arrogance, the cruel superiority. It all vanished in a matter of seconds. It was like watching a completely different person step into her body. Her shoulders slumped, her lips started to tremble, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Jake," she whispered, her voice cracking. She took a step toward me, reaching her hand out. "Jake, please, you have to understand. I was just stressed. The new job, the pressure, I wasn't thinking straight." I let out a harsh, dry laugh. It wasn't funny, but the absolute whiplash of her manipulation was almost unbelievable. "Stressed?" I echoed, stepping back so she couldn't touch me. "You were stressed, so you threw away our marriage, dragged another man into my home, and told me I was a pathetic loser who couldn't satisfy you. 10 minutes ago, you were kicking me out so your new boyfriend could sleep in my bed. Don't you dare play the victim now." "I didn't mean it," she sobbed, the tears flowing freely now. "I was just saying that because he was here. I wanted him to think I was on his side. But I love you, Jake. We've been together for 4 years. You're a good man. You're going to be a great father." My stomach turned violently. The sheer audacity to try and trap me with another man's child, mere moments after that man ran away, was evil. It was pure, unadulterated evil. "Do not insult my intelligence, Elena," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm. I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. The empty hallway of our apartment building stretched out behind it. I grabbed the first 2 black trash bags and tossed them out onto the hallway carpet. "What are you doing? Jake, stop!" she shrieked, rushing forward. I ignored her. I grabbed the next 2 bags and threw them out next to the others. "I am not raising another man's mistake," I said, looking her dead in the eyes as I grabbed the last 2 bags. "And I am not spending another second in the same room as you. Your stuff is in the hall. You have 5 seconds to walk out that door, or I'm calling the building manager and having you forcefully removed for trespassing. You aren't on this lease. You have no rights here." Elena stood in the doorway, hyperventilating. She looked at the cheap carpet of the hallway, then at the trash bags holding her expensive clothes, and finally at me. She was waiting for me to break. She was waiting for the weak, insecure Jake to step in and save her from the consequences of her own actions. But that Jake was dead. She had killed him in the parking lot earlier that afternoon. "You're a monster," she spat, her face twisting into a nasty, desperate scowl. The mask had slipped back on. "You're abandoning a pregnant woman." "I'm taking out the trash," I replied. I grabbed the edge of the heavy wooden door and slammed it shut, right in her face. The lock clicked into place with a heavy, satisfying thud. Through the door, I could hear her screaming. She kicked the wood. She cursed my name. She cursed Marcus's name. And she wailed like a child, throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. I just walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of ice water, and sat at the table. She screamed and pounded on the door for 20 minutes. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. Eventually, a neighbor must have threatened to call the cops because the yelling stopped. I heard the rustling of plastic bags, the heavy footsteps of a defeated woman dragging her life down the stairs, and then nothing. Absolute silence. It's been 6 months since that day. I kept the apartment. I kept my job. In fact, without the constant, draining anxiety of trying to please a woman who despised me, I finally had the energy to step up at the warehouse. I got promoted to a shift manager role 3 months ago. I didn't try to ruin her life. I didn't post about it on social media or call her family. I didn't have to. Karma handled it beautifully without my help. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, Marcus completely ghosted her. He blocked her number, deleted his social media, and transferred to a different branch of the logistics company. Elena, unable to handle the gossip and the stress, ended up getting fired for starting a screaming match with a manager in the middle of the office. Last I heard, the real woman who thought she was too good for my apartment had to move back into her childhood bedroom at her mother's house. No husband, no boyfriend, no job. Just a growing belly and a lifetime of regrets. They say a broken heart is a metaphor. It isn't. It hurts. It nearly destroyed me. But once the pain fades and the smoke clears, you realize something incredibly important. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and the silence it leaves behind is the most beautiful sound in the world.